You guys always see, how I use these rails. I thought I'd do a quickie on some fixturing and how to set stuff level if you haven't got a level floor to work on, or, you know, fancy stuff. This is pretty much bare bones what I work with here. But I take two rails like this, and what I'll do is there's two ways to do it. I can come back over here where I'm standing now, and I can get down, look across the top of those rails and see if they're level. Or I can bring my head up and look at the air gap between the front rail and back rail, at this angle, and see if it's close. And then what I'll do is, to bring it up where I want it, I'll just add shims right in there. And it depends. Sometimes I shim on that side, sometimes this side. It just depends on where your low side is. Always work from your low side. And then to final check everything, like if I've done something like this, stepping on everything here. These are a bunch of carbon copies. There's 4 of these pieces that were made off of one original. And what I do is I check. I'll stand here where I'm at now, sight along the edges, and I see that I'm good and flat there. Now I can also check my leveling job by standing off here and looking across the uprights. You see the uprights are plumb, they both match each other on both sides, so we're good. And that speaks to your original fit up and your original tacking. And then when all is said and done, look across the top there on those top rails and see if the air gap matches on those, and you know that everything, you're square and you're level, because you don't need to use a spirit level, a carpenter's level. You can do it this way, and this helps for a lot of you guys that don't have a shop and that pretty much work like I do out here. And it does work. Now, as far as I've got to run some cross members in here to tie this whole assembly together, and all I've done, because I can't, it's going to be miserable to try to do this, by hand. What I do is I just run a line there, and then I clamp in a fixture here. All it is some scrap. And then I've got something to rest this on, and then I'll move this whole assembly around. I'll shoot from this angle over to that far corner, and when both angles are good, I know I'm square as far as this goes. I mean, there really isn't that much to this, but there have been some questions about, how to set things up and how to fixture things. See, I mean, this is a very simple setup. You've just shot your line across there, and you clamp up here. And then you'll eyeball it, and the top of this, well, let me go over here. Like I say, no two pieces of steel. I've always said no two pieces of steel are alike. They just flat aren't. And what I'm going to do here is I see that I match the tops over here. This one actually, if you can see, had to come down a bit. And that's either 2 different mill runs on this channel, because I have channel that's been sitting out here for years and bought at different times, come from different mills, hell, probably even different countries. And you see just how much of a difference there is there. I had to drop it that far to get them to match up on the top, because this part is my critical part, because I've got to run uprights, and I like them to all be the same. See, that side's off too over here. That's just the channel. But never assume anything is straight, never assume it's square, or even the same size. But that'll give you some idea. Talk about tacking. These have to be plumb, so I've still got to run another deal across there. Okay, so what I've done when I've tacked it, I've only tacked it on the top side of this channel. What that does, if you can see that? It's hinged. So when I add up here, I've got a little bit of movement. Once I get this in, once I get channel across the top, get that where I'm happy with it, I'll tack it. Then I'll tack the bottom of this channel to lock it all up. Um, People are always wondering how, you can plumb things, and this is how you do it. You work off a hinge, and you just play with it from there. And then you can fiddle-diddle around with it. Once you get happy with it, those final tacks will lock in, and you're ready to start, well, whatever you got to do next. If you got to have two pieces at the same height where you want them to match so that your dimensions are the same, and you can't get to the underside, which I can't in this case because I've got my scrap to support it up underneath it, and I can't get underneath it to shoot either a eye sight or anything across the bottom. Just take your piece of tubing, clamp it up. It draws it up where everything's going to be equal, and your fit up there is done. You tap this back into place where you want it, set it, and you're out of there. And then you go off and do the next corner and the next corner and the next corner, and you're done. And next, I guess we'll get to squaring up this part of the deal. All right. I was hoping I might be able to, well, I actually wasn't hoping because I usually do things right. It's kind of nice to get them done right. I was going to show you how to use a come along to square things up, but as it turned out good and square. Let me see here. Always do your diagonals. We got 78 and 7/8 over here. And .78 and 7/8 over here. So we're square. Now what I did was, if you recall, initially I left these just with the two tacks on top. Once I got everything square, well, here, let's start from the beginning. When I inserted this top piece, I was probably from my finger over to here, I was that much off. These were in. And because I had this hinge down here, I was able to spread it, pop this in, check the square, clamp everything back to my fixture here, which we've already leveled, we know that. So if that's level, anything clamped to it should be level and consequently plumb. So, and that's how it turned out. We're good. But anyhow, same here again. Tack the top, two tacks on top. And when I make a tack, it's almost like a regular weld, just a short weld. I don't put just a little dot on there. And then once everything's locked, once you know you're good, you lock it up with a tack on the bottom. And it's not going anywhere. You've taken all the flexibility out of it. She won't move. Let's see what else. I'm using, when I tack this stuff up, I don't use DC. I use AC rod, 7018 AC. It's nice. You just touch the steel with it and it lights off. You don't have this crap where you got to mess around trying to get that ball of flux off the end. And I run at about 105 amps on a 30 seconds rod, which I find to be hot enough to do the job. All right, next we'll do one of the uprights, and you can see how to plumb something. All righty. Let's get this up here where I can get to it. I've cut a piece to length, and I fit it in there. It's just knocked in there at this point. Use whatever you got to space it. That's 2 inches, so I have a piece of 1/2 inch scrap. I know I'm good there. Now we'll check her on for being plumb. Square is okay for short distances like this. I'm pretty good. Actually, I'm dead plumb. Now we'll go ahead and tack it. Try to get them dead center so it doesn't pull one way or the other. Okay, now what we'll do, because chances are when you run that tack, oh, I got a fire going. There we go. It's pulled it. You never know. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Also, sometimes you cut in quite right and you'll have a gap. Yeah, it pulled it just a hair. Not much. See, I had that hinge there. I've only done one side, so I've got a hinge. I can go a little bit this way, a little bit that way with it. Now I'll go ahead and set the top. If I can find my piece of scrap. There we go. Make sure I'm at the pretty close here. We're not building the Eiffel Tower here, but if you do a crap job on this, you do a crap job on everything else. It's like anything. Okay, I'll check it again. Make sure I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Well, no, see, I brought her out when I messed around there. You can't hardly see it, but it's just a bit, probably about a 32nd of an inch. There. Alright, now we got her where we want her. Now I'll take the hinge out of it. I'll go on the opposite side. We tack there, now I'll tack here. And there you got it. There isn't much more to it. Now sometimes when you've got something that isn't quite cut quite right, you might get a welding rod here. Sometimes when you set that first with the square, you might see a gap over here. There's a tiny gap there if you can actually see it. And that's why I did tack on that side. You always tack on the opposite side of where your gap is. That way you can move it this way, or if you need to, you can move it back this way to close that gap. But like I say, sometimes you might have up to 1/8 of an inch gap here, depending on how good your chop saw is or whatever. And always tack over here. And then you got your free play over there, and then you lock it up on the top one. And this one's ready to go. I mean, that's all it takes. There's not much to it. Alrighty.